This is us. And this is our world. In our world, we are all connected. We are all links in the same chain. Together, we drive innovation and push for sustainable solutions. We digitalize to transform into a smart port and become a CO2 neutral logistics hub. That's how we create a future for all of us. Together, we make it happen. Let's talk.
Yes, good morning all viewers around the world. Welcome to this special edition of Supply Chain Talks by the Port of Rotterdam. My name is Anoushka de Heij and I will be your host today at a special broadcast of the Supply Chain Talks, which is the quarterly talk show produced by the Port of Rotterdam, in which we address most urgent topics, developments and innovations in the global supply chain. And visit our website, our YouTube channel, in case you have missed our previous shows. Yes, this special edition is dedicated to the Transport Logistic 2021, and we will address some of the main challenges and solutions our industry faces, and Port of Rotterdam faces in particular in a proposition as a container port of the future. The next 60 minutes, I will be joined by prominent experts who will elaborate on some of the most urgent matters in industry, amongst whom is Port of Rotterdam CEO Allard Kastelein. He will provide valuable insights in his keynote speech, which I will thereafter discuss with my table guests. And if you want to be part of the discussion, that's possible as well. You can use the chat function and you can send us your comments or your remarks online, and our team will respond to that during the show. Well, I can't wait. I hope you too. So get set and let's start.
Welcome. We live in historic times. The energy transition, digitization, and COVID are transforming our world, irrevocably and fundamentally. As individual parts of the supply chain, we are required to operate in an increasingly complex environment. The only way to survive in this context is to make sure you can automate wherever you can. In that way, you can focus on the challenge ahead. That involves numerous complex decisions. Digitization makes automation possible, and it leads to better decisions based on data. In a smart port, we can make even more of an impact in the future, because the success of the port will no longer be measured in terms of throughput, but in terms of our impact on employment, prosperity, well-being, incomes, and on innovation and sustainability. By embracing digitization as an opportunity, we can maintain our strong position and continue to be important drivers of future prosperity and employment. There's a lot to be gained from a smart logistics chain in logistics, sustainability, efficiency, costs, better service for our customers, maintenance, transparency, reliability, and predictability. So it is more important than ever to connect the available space, infrastructure, transport, and logistics, not only just in analog ways, but also digitally. If we don't, the world will pass us by. But, like all major changes, we have to start with ourselves and our own organizations. If we get the basics right, we can start building the supply chain of tomorrow. Data as such are not that valuable. The value is to be found in the insights the data delivers and in the application of data to optimize the infrastructure, the transport, and the handling of cargo. That begins with the infrastructure in the port. In addition to the analog infrastructure, there's now a digital dimension. The basis consists of a digital map of our port. What are the access routes? Which berths are available and what sizes? Which conditions are needed for the berthing of which vessels? This immediately delivers efficiency for the handling of shipping and therefore value for our port authority. For example, in the Harbour Masters division, the Harbour Master receives reports on approximately 230,000 port calls a year. Until recently, those reports were made by email and telephone. These days, 80% of them are processed automatically because the data are right. With a smart port infrastructure, we have a much clearer picture of the actual conditions of our assets. Maintenance becomes more predictable, easier, more sustainable, and more affordable. Large shipping companies run operations every day with hundreds of vessels in a network of hundreds of ports, which didn't used to have a standard language for things like depth and departure and arrival times. The lack of standardization caused delays in port calls and suboptimal loading. In those circumstances, it's not easy to manage a large fleet efficiently. The Port of Rotterdam Authority was the first to launch a communications platform in 2018 based on the standards recommended by the ITPCO. Because all parties involved in a port call share their schedules to the port exchange platform, a complete picture is established of the shipping traffic going in and out of the port. Everyone involved can coordinate all activities such as mooring, loading, unloading, bunkering, and vessel speed as well as possible. If there are changes to the schedule, the platform delivers automatic notifications. Cargo owners very much want to know where their cargoes are. We can now follow vessels at sea, but as soon as they get to a port, that all changes. The information is generally still collected manually, a time-consuming and error-prone process. A simple example is a clear overview of the available routes for container transport from door to door. That is a huge challenge for shippers and freight forwarders. We've been working on a digital solutions for our end clients for a few years now. We started with a route planner that shows all the routes through Rotterdam and makes it easy to connect and contact the operators. Currently, we're building a global platform for container transport that works like Google Maps. Operators share their schedules directly on the platform, so the data are accurate and reliable. The platform now contains 100,000 schedules, location data for 3,585 terminals and 625 ports in inland hubs, and schedules from 90 operators. I call on operators to join this platform so that there's a single location for shippers. Our goal is a platform that is good for everyone. Operator services are clear, shippers can compare options easily, and port connections are easy to display. I'm calling on all ports and operators to join the club. Summing up, if we want to maintain continuity, create an impact, and remain the driving force behind the economy in the future, it is essential to get both our analog and digital infrastructure right, in terms of our infrastructure, shipping processes, and cargo handling. Successful collaboration depends crucially on speaking the same language. Because one thing is certain, digitization means that our world is changing at a furious pace. The first autonomous cars, trucks, and ships are already here. Toyota and NASA have developed a rover that provides us with images from Mars. The first Hyperloop ride has already been made. Looking at these developments, it's no longer a question of whether, but when shipping will become autonomous. All the processes in our port will be digital, and we will be able to follow containers in real time. The technology makes everything possible. Think big, act now. Thank you for your attention.
Imagine a climate-neutral port. Energy from wind farms, carbon-neutral sailing, sustainable industry, a circular economy. A digital port with real-time data. A port where operations can be predicted. A port without waiting times. A port that saves time, money, and emissions by making the most of new technology. We're not there yet, but our mission is clear. The smartest port in the world and climate neutral in 2050.
Yes, thoughtful words by Port of Rotterdam CEO Allard Kastelein. Thank you very much, Allard. Yes, and joining me here at the table, Wouter Groen, Managing Director at Next Logic. Welcome. Bart Kuipers, Port Economist at Erasmus Center for Urban Port and Transport Economics at Erasmus University at Rotterdam. Welcome as well. And Matthijs van Doorn, Director Logistics at the Port of Rotterdam Authority. Well, gentlemen, welcome to this special edition of Supply Chain Talks. Yes, we're going to talk about the port of the future and which investments and developments will determine what tomorrow ports will look like. And before we dive into the details, let's start with a short introduction. Wouter, you're the Managing Director of Next Logic. So what can you tell us about your company?
Well, NextLogic is a corporate startup created by the Port of Rotterdam to improve the barge handling in the port. So we want to improve the reliability and efficiency of the port handling process. We are doing that by initiating an integral planning solution to optimize the barge handling at terminals.
Yes, a very important tool or goal, I can imagine. And you work together with the Port of Rotterdam, or are you part of the Port of Rotterdam?
We work closely together with the Port of Rotterdam, and not only with the Port of Rotterdam, with all companies involved in the chain of planning and handling of barges. So we're currently working together with around 28 companies working towards this goal.
Yeah, well, that might be a challenge, I think, 28 parties working together, but we will come to that later on during this talk show. Yes, if we also look at the recent news of the Port of Rotterdam, it was supposed actually, to be an enormous traffic jam of vessels and containers to be processed after the Ever Given was pulled loose in the Suez Canal. Yes, what is the actual status at the moment at the port and at the terminals?
Yeah, well, I would like to say so far so good actually. There were about 60 vessels stuck for Port of Rotterdam, and already 30 of them are being handled here in the port area. And of course, it puts a pressure to the system. But we've taken some measures. There's been a lot of discussion with the various actors in the supply chain to relieve this pressure a little bit. And actually, I have to say I'm quite happy how we dealt with it. It will be tough for another couple of weeks. But then we've cleared the job.
Yeah, so it's under control.
It is.
Yes, and did you expect that it would manage this way?
Well, I think yes and no. So we put some monitoring on the ship. So we put a predictor out there with our port community system port-based to really understand what would come to the Port of Rotterdam. We had a lot of discussions what we could do. We freed up some capacity for anchorage places, for example. We delayed some maintenance where possible. So we took our measures. And yes, it's busy, but that was according expectations. And I think the way we handled it is good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great achievement so far.
So far, yeah.
Yes.
But it's system peaks, and peaks are tough. And can only be solved when the actors collaborate.
Exactly. So also collaboration is key in this whole process.
Especially in these kind of extremes. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. Yes, Bart, as a port economist, you are well aware of all the developments in the industry. But is there something in particular that you and your team are focusing on?
Well, we are focusing on, I think, current structural issues in the business. And those issues are sustainability, which is very important, digitalization, and all kinds of issues related to the governance, the privatization, etc. So we are having a helicopter view on the port business, both in the Netherlands and internationally. And yeah, what are the important themes in the broader port business? That's also our topic of research. And well, that's sustainability and digitalization.
Yes, sustainability, digitalization, and I guess that the last few months also underlined the strong interdependency of world trade.
Oh yes.
And container shipping,
yes.
And not only because of course, the blockage at the Suez Canal, but also the pandemic, of course, the Corona pandemic.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen before this kind of enormous disruptions in the global supply chain?
No, I think we are at unprecedented times at the moment. And on top of that, the Suez crisis happened. I think that what you see now is a quadrupling of tariffs from container trade to Asia, from Asia to Europe, an very much a worsening of reliability, a search for empty containers. That was a total disruption of the system a few months ago. And on top of that, the blockade in the Suez Canal happened. So together, this is really something unique in the business as far as I know.
Yes, and how long do you think those are that short-term impacts actually that you're mentioning, or long-term?
Well, it's difficult because in the industry, experts, they think that this situation will continue for maybe 1 year, maybe 1 year and a half, and that is serious. And I expect some effects on the business that are longer lasting. At the moment, it's very difficult for quite a lot of companies with not that expensive cargo to import-export because of the enormous impact on pricing. So maybe issues like reshoring, near-sourcing, production closer to home, that might become a bit more popular because of this huge disruption.
Yes, and that might be the longer-term impact.
That's really the longer-term impact, and it has to be seen whether that is true. It's not for the really expensive type of goods, but for a special type of goods that are not that expensive, which are close to consumer markets, like fashion, like barbecues, like those types of companies. I would not be surprised if there would be an increasing development of near sourcing in that type of product.
Yes. Okay. Well, another development is, of course, the further scaling up in container shipping, and also the stronger peaks in throughput volumes.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, Matthijs, that also puts pressure on the total chain. How do you manage, or how do you feel that impact directly in your business?
Yeah. So I think that's really where the fun starts. Because,
it's fun.
Well, it's a challenge. It went very quick. I think in 5 to 10 years, the ship sizes increased a lot. Which has to be adapted by all the other actors in the supply chain. And that's why I say it's where the fun starts. We won't be able to put a brand new terminal in place in a year's time with capacity that can handle these big ships. So it means that the whole supply chain needs to adapt to it. And I think that's something we've seen over the last years. So it came to us, but everyone is doing a great job in adapting to it.
Yeah, because how do you adapt then? What do you do?
Yeah, well, from our point of view, we make sure that we can accept these ships. So we're in the fortunate situation that we have a very deep water. So that's I think one. Where necessary, we make sure that the water is deep enough. So that's the part we do. But more important is what our customers and their customers do. They have to handle these ships. It's in our interest to make sure that the port call is as short as possible. So we always put the ambition out there that we would like a port call of a ship to be treated as a Formula 1 pit stop, which is, I think, a strange comparison for ships of about 60 meter wide and 400 meter length.
Yes.
But we're getting there, and we develop solutions together with the market, for the market, to ensure that stakeholders can collaborate and make sure that they have efficient handling.
Yes, so optimizing those port calls are very important and one of your focus points. But what do you do to align all those different parties then to get them on the same page?
Yeah, so I think one thing is to get them at the same table. That's where it starts. Second thing is to have a look what digitalization can bring there. And we put a platform out there where all the different actors put their information in so that they can have a look real time at each other information, which makes sure that they don't have to call each other anymore, but they have it in one dashboard. We developed a product 1-2 years ago. It's called Port Exchange, and that will really help the Port of Rotterdam to achieve this Formula 1 pit stop.
Okay, wonderful. Yes. Well, let's take a look at that tool, the Port Exchange, that you developed for the Port of Rotterdam.
For every port call, Many different operations must be performed at just the right time. A lot of information is exchanged, often using separate outdated systems or even telephone. This is inefficient and causes costly mistakes and delays. Our solution is straightforward. Port Exchange puts all the relevant information into a shared dashboard and into APIs. The whole process can be monitored and coordinated much more accurately and reliably. Port Exchange cuts idle time. It helps lower fuel usage and carbon emissions, and by reducing call times, it frees up extra capacity to handle more vessels or perform maintenance. Port Exchange, port call optimization. Would you like to know more? Please visit portofrotterdam.com/port exchange.
Yes, well, Port Exchange, of course, is a very great digital tool, Matthijs, but optimizing the chain also needs investments in the analog infrastructure. So can you name some projects or other things you have done to support accessibility and turnaround times in Rotterdam?
Yeah. Well, a couple of examples is that we put sensors in the boulders. We put sensors in the quay walls. We put sensors at the railway tracks. In our own interest, it is to measure what we can do to optimize the maintenance and save costs, for example, or do the maintenance in the right time when there's no ship at the quay wall. But second part is that it also gives us insight in the usage of these assets, and we can make sure that we tailor these assets as fit for purpose. And we believe that will bring us into the future. A smart port needs to have this kind of digital infrastructure, and for that we're building a so-called digital twin. Our belief is that we have a physical port, we need a layer of a digital port where we can do simulations for ourselves, but also for our customers to improve their business and make the whole process more efficient.
Yes, and how do your customers get access to that tool?
Well, at the end, we want to share this data. When it's our data, we want to make sure it's open data so that everyone can use it. There are many smart and clever people and company out there, and we believe that when we make our data available, these smart people can make smart solutions with it, and our port will become better if we implement these solutions here in Rotterdam.
Yes, well, one of the propositions is become the smartest port in the world. So this is probably a nice initiative to work on that proposition. Yes, because the Port of Rotterdam has the facilities and the tools to handle these large vessels and containers. But what about the Hinterland?
Yeah.
Because they also have to deal with those huge volumes. So what do you do as a port authority to manage the Hinterland as well?
Yeah. So a couple of things. As I said before, the supply chain needs to adapt. So when the seaside needs to adapt and the terminal has to adapt, also the Hinterland needs to adapt. And we have discussions for a couple of years already with all the actors. Our main role is to make sure they understand each other even better. They collaborate with each other, and we facilitate these discussions and we co-invest when needed. So we've seen a couple of, I would even say system changes in the railway sector by trains that make less stops in the port, so they have more direct train connections, which saves money because they're more efficient. We've seen in the barge modality that over a couple of years, 6 bundling corridors have been established next to a barge traffic or a barge transferia in the port area. So these are really changes to the system setup, which is needed because it's a huge volume that comes in and has to go somewhere.
Yes.
So that's our role, but at the end it's the actors in the supply chain that have to do the business, and that makes the port work.
That makes the port, yeah. So if everyone is doing actually what they have to do, it will work. That also brings us, of course, to Wouter, because transport by barge and bundling of cargo, that's also one of of your most important topics, again, I think, Wouter. Because since a number of years, your team has been developing the digital tool, Next Logic. So before we talk, just have a look at a short clip of Next Logic.
In the world's smartest port, we're constantly on the lookout to make things smarter, more efficiently and sustainably. Not only for transport overseas, but also to the hinterland. Next Logic's integrated planning makes the handling of inland container shipping more efficient and reliable. Our system continuously optimizes the planning on real-time changes, making sure that all assets are used in the best possible way. Next Logic provides a highly adequate and solid logistical chain for container barging. And by doing that, we make the Port of Rotterdam even more innovative and intelligent too.
Yes, Wouter, can you tell us a little bit more about the background of this tool?
Yes, well, we've been working on it with the team for about 3 years. 3 years ago, we had our first test of the system, and the results were very promising. We simulated an average week with barge visits and terminal capacity, and what we saw was that barges, on average, were much quicker to finish their operations in the port area. So that was a clear indicator of the increased efficiency we could achieve. And besides that, we saw that we could come up with the outcome much faster than currently is possible. So that's two main advantages. Besides that, we started collaborating with Portbase. So companies involved in Next Logic can deliver their data to Portbase, and we arrive the data from there. So that makes the ease of doing business in Rotterdam much more easy. Last year, we, for the first time, tested the system with actual live data. And for this year, we plan a real operational test and hopefully the introduction of the integral planning system in Rotterdam.
Yes, well, I think one of the biggest challenges is to collect the data, and that all the parties in the chain, that they want to share the data. So what have you done so far to convince all the parties in the chain to share the data?
Well, I think that all parties involved, they see the benefits of working together on an initiative like Next Logic, because they gain a lot of efficiency from that, which they could not get when working alone.
Alone, yes, and because it took quite some years to develop the tool. Is that also one of the reasons because of convincing the parties to share?
Well, it's about 10 years ago when the Port of Rotterdam realized that with the growth of deep sea volume, the increase of container terminals, and the growth of deep sea vessels, that would put a big strain on the hinterland transport system. So the port started to, together with all the parties involved, look at solutions to improve the system. And they come up with 3 solutions. One of them, Matthijs mentioned, was bundling in the hinterland. The other 2 was integral planning and performance measurements, which are goals in Next Logic right now.
Yes. So if you want to eliminate the waste in the chain, this tool, of course, is a very important and a wonderful tool, but it's also just a tool, you could say. So what else is needed to get the waste out of the chain?
Well, we see the introduction of the integral planning just as the first step of gaining more insight in how the system is working. And all companies involved currently, they're optimizing their own process, and we're convinced that we can give them information and insights in how to improve their operations even more by changing the system as a whole.
Yes, so communication is also very important. Yes. Well, it's actually wonderful to see how so many years of persistence and believing in a tool is really now coming to a kind of end, because Next Logic will be live. Can you already tell us when it will be live?
Well, as I said, our goal for this year is an operational test, and after that, an implementation of the system. So hopefully, before the summer, we'll have the live pilot, which we are currently in the final stages of preparation.
Yes, Matthijs, are you looking forward?
Yeah, I would like to stress or underline actually one thing, because Wouter said 10 years ago this idea started. People started to work on this, and it's unique. It doesn't exist anywhere in the world. So I really hope that before summer there's a go live, but then we have something truly unique in the world here in Rotterdam. And I'm really proud that we will get there.
Yes, yes, it will be happening very soon. Yes, because can parties still join, Wouter?
Of course, Next Logic is open for everyone, and especially we would like to add some extra terminals to strengthen the network. So yes, of course.
Yes, so it's open for everyone who wants to collaborate and wants to make the chain more reliable and efficient. Well, thank you very much and good luck with it. Yes, Bart, because let's also move on to your organization. As a center of expertise, you provide thought leadership. Mm-hmm. By connecting academic research to the international industry. Well, we have already discussed the ever-increasing size of the vessels and the necessary change of the system at the deep sea side of the container chain. What do you see as the most important change the system has needed?
Well, we talked about orgware, organizational measures. We talked about digital innovations, and that is, I think, that it's very important compared to hardware, software, hardware, orgware. So what I think is very important is that you concentrate on the organizational and the digital measures, and I think that's important together with sustainability, instead of just building more hardware, which is sometimes also needed. But I think this smart infrastructure, the creation of smart infrastructure, the creation of collaboration with all those parties, I think that's a priority.
Yeah, that's a priority, but that's also the challenge, I think, collaboration.
Yes. Yeah.
Because what do you see at different ports happening, because they have the same changing circumstances?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see the same movement?
Yeah, you see in the big ports in Europe, they have the same challenges, basically. What is very difficult is to create a different atmosphere in the hinterland of cooperation together with the Port of Rotterdam. And I think that the Port of Rotterdam as a chain manager succeeded in, well, drastically changing the behavior of the cooperation in the hinterland, of the stakeholders in the hinterland. And I think that's a real big challenge.
Yeah, because you have to get the whole system in shape, and it's also a competitive sector.
Yeah.
So what do you see? What kind of tools work to get all those parties on the same page?
Well, I think the examples given, especially the bundling, especially, for instance, also a barge transferium on the Maasvlakte terminals, those are excellent examples of challenges that work, of solutions that work. And what you see right now in the big expected congestion in the Port of Rotterdam because of the Suez crisis, you see that things are going smoothly. And I think that is because in the last years there was quite some challenges, quite some investment in cooperation, in investment in new methods, so that now that it is really needed, it really does work.
Yeah, because they did the homework.
Yes, they did the homework in a period when it was really needed. And what you see that it further improves with Next Logic. Next Logic starts working later this year. So that's very encouraging because it only adds up to the good practices.
Yes. It is a very important contribution. Yes. And what else is needed to overcome? Because we also have seen that the chain is also very vulnerable.
Yeah.
So what is also needed to overcome that vulnerability?
Well, I think the vulnerability, I think two spearheads. One is increased IT investment to make everything visible, to make transparency in the chain so that you can see what is happening. I think it's very difficult to change the deep sea container system, to change those big ships. They are there. You have to deal with it. So I think just make visible what is happening. So that's one. And the other one is increasingly investment in rail and barge transport to be able to do the port operations on a sustainable manner towards the very important hinterland of the port. So those two, visibility and sustainable hinterland transport, are my priorities.
Are your priorities? Yes, because Wouter, you know a lot of parties in the chain. You work together with all those parties. Are your partners ready for the challenges Bart also describes?
I think they are, and they are always looking ahead and preparing for things to come. So I think collaboration, discussion, using the digital infrastructure to the maximum capacity are things you have to look at. And I think the companies I work with within NextLogic are really doing that.
Yes, and what do you see? What is the behavior you see that they are willing?
Well, what you see is what we call in the Netherlands polderen. So I'm very glad to see there's a willingness for gain sharing on certain topics, and on the other hand being competitive on other subjects. But the willingness to work together is really what's making the difference.
Yeah, the willingness. Yeah, because Matthijs, optimizing the supply chain, I think it must be on the top of the agenda of all parties that are involved. Yep. Important issue. So what are you doing as a port authority to get that on top of mind?
Yeah, so we try to stimulate it as good as possible, and we started with that already 20 years ago when we grounded the port community system, today called Portbase. For us, it's really about having standards, and making sure that data can be exchanged, making sure that there's interoperability, and then smart services will make the port more efficient and smarter. And the port community system, Portbase, is really the centerpiece of this. So we invested in that, and we're very happy to see that more and more actors in the supply chain are using Portbase. It offers transparency, it offers interoperability, and we believe that with that business will grow, and they keep on developing. And apart from the cooperation with NextLogic, as Wouter explained, they added cargo opening and cargo closing times recently, which makes the supply chain more transparent.
Yeah. So is that also a logical position for an authority?
Yeah, well, we believe yes, we have a neutral role. For us, it's important that cargo will come, and it needs to come efficient, it needs to come sustainable. We care for our neutral role, so we don't have an incentive to do anything with the data of our customers and the actors. That's why we positioned this port community system neutral. They are the data hub. They should facilitate the trade via Rotterdam.
Yeah. Do you agree, Bart? Is that a logical role for a port authority? Do you also see that at other ports?
Yes, I think it's real. I approve that seriously. I think it's very important that a port authority, as a neutral party, has a responsibility of being an engine in these developments, and you see it in quite a lot of ports. It differs, but most of the so-called landlord ports, they are seeing this responsibility in the broader logistical network towards the hinterland and the foreland. And I think, the Port of Rotterdam is always very forward-looking, and the innovations presented are just very good examples of that.
Yeah. So that's a good role that the Port Authority is actually taken, because transparency and information exchange, they are important to solve the biggest problems in the chain. But how will that influence then the whole ecosystem and also the competitiveness of the sector? Because if you share data, what will happen with your position then?
Well, digital infrastructure and working with all those innovations that are difficult, that are two different things. So I think what is really needed is social innovation, that all the parties in the hinterland are being able to work in the system, that are really using the system instead of sub-optimization in their own systems. So I think it's also very important that you as a port are open for cooperation with all those parties, and that you are learning the parties how to use the systems best.
And you call that social innovation.
That's really social innovation, how to deal with all those digital innovations, how to work with it. If there's a new investment, well, you should learn how to use it best. I think what we see in Brexit is also an excellent example. Without port base, without the innovations and the systems already in place, I think that the challenges would be much more difficult than we now have. There is an information structure available which does the task in this very difficult Brexit situation.
Yeah, so collaboration between all parties within the logistical chain is essential in creating reliable and more efficient flows. And already many initiatives are taken by companies here at the Port of Rotterdam. And we have asked 4 companies what they do to make the chain more efficient and reliable. Let's take a look at our first testimonial from Deep Sea Terminal ECT.
If I contemplate about the theme of this session, how do we have to position ourselves for the port of the future, my answer is clear: sustainable collaboration. With sustainable, I both refer to the nature of the collaboration itself and the necessity to save our planet. Last year, during COVID-19, and this year, during the Suez crisis, we have experienced that the port can only be successful if all actors in the supply chain work together. But it is predominantly a question of a mind shift. We at ECT are convinced that the port of the future is successful in integrating all parts of the supply chain. At ECT, we are open for collaboration with all stakeholders, being it deep sea and feeder liners, hinterland operators, logistics service providers or shippers, to improve and renew the supply chain to make it more efficient and more sustainable.
Yes, about a mind shift, he's telling us. Do you agree? Is it a mind shift?
I agree, and ECT is one of the first companies to join the NextLogic initiative, and I can see that the testimonial is
powerful.
It is what I see every day in working together with ECT. So,
yeah, he really believes that this is the way, huh?
Yeah.
Yes, well, wonderful. Yes, because rail operators are also an indispensable link as cargo moves from the port to and from the hinterland. So let's see how Rail Innovators Group is handling this.
The European Commission declared 2021 as the year of rail, with the target to increase the current modal share of rail freight from 18% to 30% by 2030. And by achieving that, rail freight transportation can contribute to a significant reduction of carbon footprint caused by transportation in Europe. However, the challenge for railway is to become more flexible in comparison to road transportation. With our group of companies, we offer mobility solutions for transportation by rail, offering flexible train capacities and renting wagon equipment on the spot. By doing so, we can quickly set up new rail connections from the Port of Rotterdam into the European hinterland or even the Far East to contribute to solutions in these matters. With such adaptivity, rail freight can contribute to a reliable supply chain, even in times when things don't go as planned.
Yes, Matthijs, I also think that this is a wonderful party to work with. Are they all like this?
Well, I think Julian is a great example of a group of companies that offers flexibility to the market. We have more than 30 of these rail operators delivering their services in Port of Rotterdam, and I'm very happy that our port is seen as strategic. So that's why these operators are here. And with rail, we reach further into our hinterland. And we see some great movements there. So as an example, in South Germany, 3 years ago, we had 9 connections a week. Today, it's more than 30.
Yeah, that's a great improvement.
It's a great improvement, and that's because of the work that companies like Unions are doing here. They offer flexibility. We work with them to offer reliability together with the infrastructure provider, and that's how things should work.
Yes.
And that makes a great service offering to the shippers and the importers in the European hinterland.
A great service and an optimal chain, a working chain. So railway is one way to reach the hinterland, but inland shipping is also a very important mode of transport. So let's take a look at Dancer Group.
With a 33% market share of the total container volume to and from the hinterland, inland shipping plays an important role in the success of the Port of Rotterdam. To maintain this success and work towards a sustainable future growth, it is the aim of Dancer Group to contribute to optimize the container supply chain. One example is our initiative to collect containers on terminals in the hinterland and bundle these volumes and deliver them just in time in the Port of Rotterdam. The container inland shipping industry develops, together with the terminal operators and the Port Authority, numerous initiatives to provide the market with a resilient and reliable supply chain.
Yes, Bart, how would you assess those different kind of transport modes? You have railways,
yes.
Barge.
What the difference is between barge and railway?
Yes, but also in terms of the Green Deal, for example.
Yeah, well, I think the future is both to rail and to barge transport. The Port of Rotterdam is connected to the hinterland, the German hinterland, to Swiss by means of the River Rhine. That's a huge advantage. It's also a huge advantage to transport enormous amounts of containers by barge because of the possibility of having 200 containers on one barge. It's also like rail, both are very important for sustainable mobility, for sustainable transport. Well, rail is often, well, you have now the new Silk Route, which connects Rotterdam to even to China.
Exactly.
But for the German hinterland, for example, for ports like Duisburg, barge transport is absolutely vital because of the availability of sustainable transport and because of the availability of, well, the volume issue. It's able to transport enormous amounts of volume.
Yeah, and integrated that with the flexibility as well.
Oh yes, very indeed. I think barge transport is very flexible. It can do the job right now with in these difficult times, with the enormous demands of containers related to the Suez incident, so to say. And I think that the system works. That barge transport is performing to schedule.
Yeah. So we talked about the mode of transport, but what about the role of the warehouse operators? Because also they play an important role in creating a more reliable chain. So let's take a look at Nele Vats.
Historically, the Port of Rotterdam is seen as the gateway to Europe. But more and more, we see Rotterdam as the gateway to the world. Twice as many chemicals are being exported via Rotterdam as they're being imported. With our strong European transport network, we collect goods all over Europe. We store them at our export consolidation center here in Rotterdam, as close to the deep sea terminals as possible. With the great warehousing, good connections with Dutch customs, we deliver the goods just in time at the Rotterdam deep sea terminals. And from there, goods are transported all over the world. One great example is with a German manufacturer. We collect goods for them for over 6 years. We store them here in our export consolidation center, and payload has increased for simultaneously 6 years. Customer satisfaction has increased, lead times has shortened, and so we see export via Rotterdam, it works.
Yes, well, I think it's safe to conclude that we need all the parties in the chain to be involved, to feel responsible in driving the change towards the future. But to close this talk, actually, what would be your final advice for all those parties to get prepared, Wouter?
Well, I think there's still a lot to gain if you talk about preparation and continuous improvement of your operation in further integrating systems with each other, and thus by doing that integrating processes. So you really create a seamless supply chain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Matthijs, what is your final tip?
Yeah, if I may, 2 things. One is innovation. We need to keep innovating. We've always done it. We need to keep doing it. And a second thing is, in Rotterdam, we always say we roll up our sleeves. And we've done that over the last years. And that's why we're fit for the future now. But we need to keep rolling up our sleeves to stay fit in the future, no matter if it's a human, a computer, or a machine. This is really needed.
Yeah, so we are not there yet. We still have to work continuously on that process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, roll up the sleeves. Yeah, Bart, what is your final tip?
I totally agree with those two in front, but I think be prepared. So invest in resilience. The unthinkable can happen. Just think of the Suez Canal, but also think of the Corona crisis. Nobody thought of those things happening, and next year or the year after that, other things will happen that nobody thinks of right now. Especially the climate crisis is very important. So I think invest in resilience. Invest in scenario thinking, what could happen, and adapt to the unthinkable.
Yeah, so be prepared for the unthinkable.
Yes.
Yes. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for this conversation, and thank you very much for watching this special edition of the Supply Chain Talks. And in case you have missed our previous shows, please visit our YouTube canal to watch them too. Enjoy the rest of Transport Logistic Online 2021 and see you next time. Goodbye.